Everybody,
There we go.
okay, we just started recording. All right.
No, no, no.
So
There we go.
good afternoon to everyone. We want to thank everyone for joining us today in our part two of our coronavirus and the workplace labor law update. We have a lot to cover. Interesting, I had an opportunity to have a quick conversation with both Juan and Carmen, who will be our speakers today. We're excited about what the topic, but one of the things as we see that as the current Omicron variant seems to have subsided, the regulations and the laws, labor laws, are not going to subside. We're going to see them here for a while. So it's important that we understand that that these are here to stay. So as we look forward to understanding, this is more of a long-term ramifications here. So we will start up. And by the way, we'll let you know that this is being recorded. So here's what we have scheduled just in our webinar series. Our March, and we already have a date for it, March 31st, improving employee retention is going to be a really hot topic. And we're going to take this from the industrial psychology side of it, not just how do you retain, but the why people leave and the psychology of the workplace. So I think that's going to be a great session. Encourage you to put it on your calendar. I will have it on the next screen. April, cybersecurity. As most of us know by now, we are in a high cyber watch with the events in Ukraine. In Russia, and there's been a lot of saber rattling, including threats of cyber attacks. So many companies are on high alert right now. So that will be April. We'll have a cybersecurity officer talk about what we can do in the workplace to keep the workplace more secure. And in May, we'll talk about CalSabers. It's a state program that is mandated for all employees. I believe July 1st would be the mandate for firms that do not have a retirement program for the workplace. So let's move on. Here we go. So here's your dates. Take a picture of it. You can let us know. We'll definitely let you guys know about this coming up. So it's improving employment retention in the workplace, March 31st. That's on a Thursday, the last day of March, 10 a.m. So it'll be a new time because our speaker, that was a time that we were given. So definitely put it on your calendar, and we look forward to hosting you there. If for any reason you want to listen to this, taking notes, sometimes it's hard. Here's our YouTube library, and this session will be on YouTube tomorrow, and you can just get a link and forward it on. If somebody in your firm wasn't able to listen or partake, it will be on there. So our last one was AB 685, and that was on there, and that was recorded. So just anything, feel free to pass it along. So that's part of our YouTube. The channel is on the bottom for our library. Today's agenda. I'm your host, and we welcome you. We will have Carmen Torres, who is she handles much of the HR for our clients, and she's excellent, full of knowledge. Is going to talk about the 2022 Supplemental Paid Leave Act. It was recent. This actually happened right after our first seminar. Governor Newsom signed an order retroactive. Most of us know, but there's some details that that you may not know that Carmen will expound on. And then Juan Torres, who did our first session, is going to talk about the guidelines on the employee working remotely. That's just such a big topic, and we think both Carmen and Juan, they do such an excellent job in communicating these complicated issues and ever changing. And that's the thing, is we can hear one this month, and 2 months down the road it can change. So take down this number if you want to text anything and questions. We may be able to, we'll probably field as many as we can, but the number is 323-207-5850. Once again, 323-207-5850. And that's how we're going to be able to handle the Q&A. QArisco Insurance Services, we just moved our new offices in Lakewood, and we have joined and merged with Endzone Insurance Services. So we're excited about that, and we're in a new facility. Some of the things that most of you know what we do in terms of our business insurance and automobile. So we're a full service agency, our loss control, risk management, and client related resources that we add. So our key is really providing the value added service. That's kind of our motto. This is a production of another corporation that we have, is Human Capital Management, and that's who does our education and our training. So Human Capital Management is more of a risk management solutions for small businesses, and these seminars are part of that core focus. Our sponsors definitely want to shout out to Southern California Corporate Growth Partners. Thank those folks out there, John Gutierrez, for sponsoring us, and basically a great resource for any business that is looking to grow, and they provide a wealth of services. Their website is on the bottom, so feel free to access them. But they were up on the latest on the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and all the grants that were available. And there's still things out there that the government is looking to continue to help stimulate business. So we thank CalGrowth Corporate Partners for their participation. I put this proverb, it's where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in a multitude of counselors, it's safety. So we're in a safe environment. We've got two wonderful speakers. Once again, Carmen Torres and Juan Torres. No relationships, but great speakers, and we're looking forward to today's seminar. So with that, I don't want to take up any more time, and I want to introduce Carmen Torres. She has her firm, My HR Specialist, and her contact information is there, and she will be taking any texts or any questions regarding her section. So are we, let's see, make sure that Carmen is unmuted so we can, Carmen, can you?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Carmen. Great, thank you for just your participation. You always do a wonderful job. We're excited to see, what changes are happening out there in legislative world, and I will hand off the baton to you. And by the way, I like the backsplash on your wall. So
Thank you. Thank you. The yellow represents joy for me. So, it's always nice to just have a really great reminder, which, by the way, I want to acknowledge your proverb as well. I really like it. I think it's very fitting. And, I'm looking forward to connecting with your participants today.
great.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It's such a pleasure to connect with you. In 2020, we started off with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. At some point, it ended up with a tax credit for employers, and a lot of employers were very comfortable. They felt like, okay, I can do this. And why? Because, there was a tax credit for employers. It wasn't really coming out of the pocket of the employer. In 2021, it became optional. And if you opted into it, then you would continue with the tax credit for employers. So we're now in 2022. I mean, nobody expected for us to be in this space, to continue, and to be still with coronavirus and now the Omicron. So what do we have today? Today we have supplemental paid sick leave is what we're going to be talking about. And you can go to the next page, Javier. So on February 9th, 2022, like Javier mentioned, Governor Newsom signed into law this COVID supplemental paid sick leave. You're going to know it very well as SPSL. And it became effective on the 19th. It is retroactive to January 1. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that means. And it will continue through September 30th of this year. So the new law expires, like I mentioned, September 30th. However, if covered employees are using the SPSL on September 30th, then and the absence would be continued uninterrupted past September 30th, the employee is eligible to continue using that available paid sick time that they might still have. So, again, just really briefly on this, if the employee goes on a paid sick leave due to COVID on, let's say, September 27th, and on October 2nd, they're still out because of COVID and there was no return to work in between time, then the employee would continue to be eligible until they are ready to return to work. And a full-time employee can take a maximum of 80 hours of this paid sick leave during the period from January 1, 2022 through September 30th of this year. And the next item, the next slide, we have, who's covered, right? It's employers in the public and private sector who have more than 25 employees are going to be required to comply with this new leave. And the covered employees include those who are full and part-time employees. And this is if the employee is unable to work or telework for any of the reasons that we're going to discuss momentarily. There's no length of service. This is the one thing that I think is very critical because with paid sick time, an employee has to be employed for a minimum of 30 days. But in this particular case, if an employee starts working on Monday and on Tuesday they show up and they have COVID, they are eligible for this plan. So that is very critical. Also, just want to mention that this does not apply to independent contractors. So if you do have independent contractors, they would not be eligible under these terms. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So an employer must take SPSL that's available for immediate use upon an employee's oral, or must make it available upon the employee's oral or written request. The employee may decide how many hours of the supplemental paid sick leave they want to use, and the employer may not require the employee to use any other paid or unpaid time off, such as PTO or vacation time, before allowing the employee to use the SPSL. So once again, the employer must, if SPSL is available, the employer must make that available to the employee before any other sick pay or PTO is used. Excuse me. So an employee, full-time employees who work or were scheduled to work an average of at least 40 hours per week in the 2 weeks prior, would be eligible. They are able to use this these hours in two different ways, so there are 40 hours that may be taken specifically for their own illness. And then there are also 40 hours that may be taken for other reasons, perhaps they have a family member who is ill, and we're definitely going to go over that. So while the SPSL allows for time off for vaccination and including receiving a booster, employers may limit the leave for time to attend their appointments or maybe side effects that the employee might have, to 3 days or 24 hours, unless the employee provides verification from, a medical provider that the employee or even a family member continues to experience some adverse symptoms. In that case, the leave may be longer. So we'll go to the next slide. And let's talk about, who's eligible, right? So covered employees are those who cannot work or telework due to the reasons that we've noted here. So the covered employee is subject to a quarantine or isolation period that's related to COVID-19, as defined by the CDC or a local public health officer who has jurisdiction over that workplace. A covered employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to isolate or to quarantine due to COVID-19, or a covered employee is attending an appointment for themselves or for a family member to receive the vaccine or a vaccine booster. And the next one is that the covered employee is experiencing symptoms or caring for a family member who's experiencing symptoms that are related to the vaccine or a booster. And this is, again, if it prevents them from being able to work or telework. And we can go to the next slide. A few other items would be if the employee is experiencing symptoms and is seeking a medical diagnosis, or if they are caring for a family member who's been advised to isolate or quarantine, or, and this one's, again, very important, if they are caring for a child whose school or maybe like a nursery had to shut down as a result of COVID-19. And also employee, if the employee tests positive or is caring for a family member who actually tested positive. So there are definitely various reasons. We can go on to the next one. So in regards to being, the supplemental paid sick leave being retroactive, right? I think this is, something that's very important. The requirement to provide retroactive supplemental paid sick leave does not start on, or is actually started on February 19th. So this retroactive payment is only required if the covered employee makes an oral or a written request to be paid for leave that qualifies them as we described. So for example, if a covered employee had to take 2 hours off for a vaccine appointment on, let's say, January 15th, then the employee can make an oral or a written request to you so that they can be paid for the time that they were off in January. Now, because it is a qualifying reason, they would be eligible. Now, if the oral or the written request, was made prior to February 19, it does not count. They actually would have to give you a new request. So just be on alert, if an employee does make a request, just be on alert what the guidelines are. So after the employee makes the request, then at that point, the employer has until the next full pay period to make good on that retroactive payment. At that time, the employer must also provide the employee like an itemized wage statement that shows how much time has been used by the employee. Under other sick policies, for example, you're required to show how much time is available. Under this particular policy, so it's going to be important for you to work with your payroll companies so that you can accurately display the information. Under this policy, you have to show them how much they've used, okay? So we'll go to the next one. And just a couple of more things for you to keep in mind is that if an employee is requesting retroactive pay, the employer may request documentation. So this is, this is good. The documentation could include anything from medical record of the test result. It could be an email or a test from the testing company that they've used. It could even be a picture that was, texted to you showing the test result, stating that the employee or a qualifying member tested positive. An employer may not deny the paid sick leave solely on lack of certification from a healthcare provider. So it's better to err on the side of, allowing them to take the time and then to make adjustments later. Don't deny the paid sick time, because this employee, could provide information. So for example, even if they can't provide information, but that they were at work, they were sick, and they had COVID-like symptoms, and then all of a sudden you have 2 or 3 other employees who also resulted with COVID, and they happen to work in the same environment. I mean, we have to make an assumption that it's very likely that they did have COVID. So again, just err on the side of caution, so that this doesn't come back to bite you later. And the employee may also provide or take an over-the-counter rapid test. This is important, or test that, or they can test at a facility. But a lot of times, more recently, employers, before the policy went into effect, employers were not allowing over-the-counter tests. But know that if an employee had an over-the-counter test at the beginning of the year, then you would be required to pay them if they ask you for pay during that time. And we'll go to the next one. And then finally, I want to share a little bit about, so the amount of paid leave that employees already received in 2022 before the paid sick leave started, may affect or offset, what the employer is responsible to provide. So, so if an employer paid an employee another benefit leave, such as sick leave or vacation time, then the employer may be able to count those hours towards the number of SPSL hours, but it must also reverse the hours. So you must give them credit. You must give credit to the employee, for example, and this is again, if the employee wants. So if they use sick time and they use, let's say, 20 hours of sick time, and the employee says, hey, you know what, I want you to apply my 20 hours of SPSL, to my sick time, or I want to have my regular sick hours back and apply the SPSL hours, then you would be required to do that. The same thing with, vacation, if they used vacation. So in addition, if the employee used other benefits, just keep in mind that you would be required to offset those hours for them to ensure compliance. I know it's a lot of information. But we invite you to connect with us and, let us know what, I think we can go to the next slide, which might be the last one there. But, we invite you to connect with us. Let us know how we can support you. There are a lot of changes that are constantly taking place. For example, I mean, there was one day, one rule went into effect, and the following day, it had already changed. So ask questions, make sure that you connect with a specialist or, with an attorney who's going to be able to guide you specifically for your needs. Remember that these rules are for employers who have more than 25 employees. So, that's another thing to take into consideration. The last thing I want to mention, though, is that with employers who have fewer than 25 employees, don't be so quick to deny or to decline an employee from being able to take the time that they need, because they may be protected under other rules, under other guidelines, such as CFRA, CFRA. So there are other possibilities. Again, connect with a specialist who's going to be able to support you. Thank you so much.
Carmen, thank you very, very much. And we'll send you there's some questions, and I'll have Carmen answer those directly, but we want to move on. Thank you, Carmen. This is Carmen's information, so make sure, take a picture of it. It will also be on our YouTube channel, but if you want to connect with her, I would strongly suggest you reach out to her. Once again, great presentation. Thank you again, Carmen.
Thank you.
We are now going to move on to our next session with Juan Torres. Juan has been with us many times, and he's a labor law attorney, excellent work. He's worked with many of our clients, wrongful termination, PAGA claims, class actions, all those unsavory situations that business face. And he's here today to help us with continuing part 2. So Juan, good afternoon. Can we get, maybe we'll unmute Juan. Maybe we have him muted. Let's see here. Let's see.
Muted myself. How can you hear me
Okay,
now?
got it. Okay.
Can you
Good
hear
to
me
have
now?
you, Juan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Javier, for the opportunity and great presentation, Carmen. Just to piggyback on one of the last things that Carmen said about if you employ less than 25 employees, yeah, don't pull the trigger right away, because as we discussed last time, there is the OSHA regulations that require for exclusion pay for any employee that is out, either because they've been exposed or because they tested positive. And as we discussed last time, that is a requirement, and that's in effect until April 14. Although I think I'm expecting within the next 2 to 3 weeks some regulations that will extend that, at least some of those requirements. So, anyways, the topic that I'm going to cover today is somewhat general and basic, but it's a topic obviously that is very much in vogue, in that you have a lot of employees who are working remotely, me being one, although I'm in the office today, but I've been working remotely for almost all the time since this COVID thing hit. And it's worked out well for me. But I'm what is called an exempt employee. So in terms of the wage and hour regulations and laws, they don't really apply. A lot of them don't apply to me. But if you have, as most employers, if you have exempt or non-exempt employees, then you have to be very careful with regard to compliance with wage and hour laws, with work, if you have employees who are working remotely. And of course, one of the recruitment tactics that, or one of the requirements, I guess, not recruitment, but one of the requirements of a lot of employees that are looking for employment is that, look, I want to work remotely, and either part-time or full-time. So that is something that some employers are having to deal with in terms of being able to recruit employees. So if your type of business is the type that can accommodate that type of request, then I think you're ahead of the game in terms of being able to recruit high quality employees. All right, next slide. So we're just going to cover some guidelines that at least in my mind, you need to look out for if you do have and are going to have employees that are going to be working remotely, particularly non-exempt employees. And obviously, we're not going to cover all the guidelines that would apply, but generally the basic and what I consider to be the major ones. My suggestion, strong suggestion, is that if you have employees who are working remotely now, and you don't have any written policies and procedures by which this employee is to be governed in terms of the guidelines by which that will govern their remote employment, then I strongly suggest that you have some. And we're going to discuss what should be in some of the stuff that should be in those policies and procedures. Because, as you well know, it's like not having a contract when you enter into some kind of transaction. If you don't have a written contract and something goes haywire, they say, well, you say you were going to do this. No, I did not say I was going to do that. Yes, you did. Well, if you have a written contract, it'll say whether or not that person said what they said they were going to do, they were required to do. So if you don't have any written policies and procedures for an employee who's working remotely as to what hours they're supposed to be working, what is their work schedule, when are they supposed to take lunch, et cetera, then you have pretty much no control. And if something were to occur, that employee said, well, you know, they never provided me with any with a rest break, or they never provided me with a meal period, and you know, and you're gonna say, yes, we did. Remember, we discussed it. We said what you could take it at this time or that time or whatever time. No, we didn't. Well, but if you have some written policies and procedures that say, hey, look, these policies and procedures include the meal, the subjects of meal and rest periods, then at least you have something to back up your position that we did discuss it, and you knew what the policies and procedures were, and if you decide not to take lunch for whatever reason, then at least you have a potential defense. So that's the first guideline, and in segue with that, or in connection with that, or related to that, is having an actual agreement with the employee. Obviously, you need to be careful as to how you word whatever you word in that agreement, particularly making sure that you don't have anything in there that could potentially be interpreted as providing an employee with guaranteeing them with a certain time of employment. As you all probably know, California is an at-will state, which means that you can terminate an employee at any time without notice for whatever reason, as long as the reason is not illegal. But if you have a written agreement, and it has been used a lot, that sometimes there's language that was not intended to provide an extended or a set period of time for the employee's employment, but the language is stated in such a way that it is interpreted that way. So then the employee comes in and says, well, you terminated before this time period, and now you owe me for whatever time period you say you're going to employ me. The work schedule, that's one of the things that should definitely be at least discussed with the employee. What is going to be their work schedule? Is it going to be the same as when they are in-house? 9 to 5, 9 to 4:30, 8 to 5, etc. So make sure you have a set work schedule, and that the employee agrees to and agrees to keep it. And along with that, have a mechanism, if necessary, whereby the employee clocks in or clocks out. There's computer programs, there's phone systems. I have clients who use a phone system for that, or some other type of mechanism by which you are able to keep track of what time they clocked in and the clocked out. Particularly, this is very important, very, very important with regard to meal breaks. You absolutely want to make sure that, first of all, that you've communicated that they know, or make sure that they are aware that that they can take the meal breaks. And then you want to see if they're taking them or not taking them, and if you have a mechanism that you can review to determine whether or not they are taking them, and you see that they are not, at least there's no record being kept of them taking them, because they're not, there's no showing of clocking out and clocking in. Then you call up that employee and say, hey, what's going on? Are you taking your meal breaks? And if they say yes, okay, well, you need to clock it, you need to record it. And if they say no, well, you need to take them. And then you write them an email or something, follow up, so that you can have something to back your position in the event that you have a lawsuit in your hands. And as you well know, alleged violation of meal and rest breaks there's still a lot of litigation on that. And I would think that it's going to continue. And now with this remote working situation that we have, a large portion of the employees are working remotely. I think this meal and rest break issue is going to continue. It's going to continue to be an issue. Okay, next slide, please. Now, the prior one. Yeah, this one. Okay, there is legislation that was just introduced on February 18, just last week. Assembly Bill 1028 that addresses this issue about employees working remotely, and ways that you can get around the overtime issue and the rest and meal break issue. And under this, if it goes into effect, I believe if it's approved, it passes, and it's signed by the governor, it will most likely take effect next year, the January 1. So keep your eyes and ears out for this. It may ultimately not pass, but anyways, basically there's more to it, but these two provisions for purposes of our discussion that are contained in the proposed bill is that the employee and employer can enter into an agreement that provides for the employee to work up to 10 hours per day within a 40-hour work week without the employer and the having to pay overtime. So as you all know, under California law, if an employee, a non-exempt employee works more than 8 hours in a day, in a work day, then they're entitled to overtime pay for any time over the 8 hours. We're here under this situation. Again, it's up to 10 hours. It's not beyond 10 hours, but up to 10 hours. Again, this is still not law, but it's something for you to look out for. And then on the meal and rest breaks, under this potential new law, the employer-employee can enter into an agreement whereby the employee agrees that they can take the meal and rest breaks at any time. So ultimately, if the employee decides not to take it, then that's their issue. So I just wanted to alert you of this potential new law that is being discussed as we speak. Now, another important issue is a defined workspace at wherever the employees are working remotely. I recommend that this be established. Is it going to be in some bedroom where they're going to be working out of? Is it going to be in their kitchen? Is it going to be in their living room or garage or wherever? And have a written defined workspace where they're going to be working. And why is this important? Well, for one, it's in the event that this employee is injured while they are, quote, in the course and scope of their employment while they're working remotely, then one of the things that has to be established that this injury, maybe they tripped and fell on a cord that was in the defined workspace, or they tripped and fell, or some item fell on top of them, hit their head, or they bend down to pick up something in their defined workspace, and they sustain a back injury or back pain, and then they're claiming that's a work injury, and therefore they want workers' compensation benefits. So it's very important for that purpose to try to make sure. Obviously, ultimately, unless you have a camera on the employee, which I would strongly recommend against, is you won't be able to determine whether in fact what the employee is saying as to the cause of an injury was in that defined workspace and was while they during their work shift. It could have been they were still at the defined workspace, but not during their work shift, or maybe not even performing work tasks. But anyways, that's something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. All right, another huge issue is the privacy and confidentiality. Obviously, when the employee is it's in-house and they're working on site, you can keep track of privacy and confidentiality issues far better than if the employee is working off-site. But things to keep in mind is that you cannot monitor the employee's personal phone calls or use of the phone for personal reasons. And you can also not record any phone calls without the consent of the employee. So you cannot do that. So if you want to record some kind of call that you have with an employee, then you need to obtain their consent. And you can monitor a computer if it's the business computer. And you can monitor that, and you can monitor monitoring personal emails. You cannot do that, but if it's in your personal, if it's in the business computer, if it's a business computer, then you may potentially, I mean, there's issues that you need to look out for, but you may potentially be able to access or at least monitor the use of emails. And then the thing of monitoring activities during their work shift. There's ways that you can do that. You can call up the employee. You can have the employee check in, call in every so often, or you can have the employee send emails indicating that they're performing whatever task it is that you've assigned to them, or whatever other tasks they're to perform. But there's a myriad of ways that you can be able to monitor the employees' activities to make sure that they are in fact performing work while they are supposed to be performing work. But obviously there is certain ways that you cannot to monitor the activities because of privacy and confidentiality issues. So if you intend to monitor an employee's working or activities during their work shift, then I strongly recommend that you consult with someone who has knowledge in this area of the law. And then I think this may be the last one, is as you probably already know, employees are entitled to be paid for any equipment, materials, cell phone use, internet access, that is for purposes and for the benefit of the employer, and is for purposes of their employment. So like I mentioned, internet access, obviously that internet access, if they're working remotely, will most likely also be for their personal use, for the use of other individuals if it's a household. I guess in that situation, as with a cell phone, you can say, well, we'll pay a portion of it. We'll pay X percentage of it, of the internet access, because some of it is being used for purposes of their employment. I think that may be the last slide. Is there another one? Oh, okay. The last one in particular is very important. Posting requirements, as you all know, employers are required to post these postings, the federal and state employment law postings, at a site where the employees work on site. This requirement is not, an employer is not released or relieved of this requirement because of the employee is working remotely. The employee still has to be provided with these notices. And so the law was passed stating that you can provide the employee with the postings via email or via emails. So you can you can easily comply with that requirement by doing that. And then the last item here is, I guess because I'm working remotely, I could probably go to Mexico, or go to probably any place in the world where I have internet access and be able to work. One of the things that you have to be careful about, for instance, if an employee is working, you have an employee and they said, well, you know, I have family in New Mexico. Can I go and work in New Mexico? And you say, yeah, that's fine, as long as you perform your work and you meet all these other guidelines. If that employee works out of whatever other state for an extended period of time, and it depends on what the law is in that state and what the law is in California, you, as an employer, you may be subject to the laws of that other state, and in this case, New Mexico. So you have to be careful if you have an employee who's working in another state, particularly for an extended period of time, you need to make sure that you don't run into any issues with compliance with employment and tax laws and business corporate laws that may apply to you as an employer here in California in that state. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's all I have for you today. This was something simple, but it's some things that I think you definitely need to think about and take into account if you have or will have employees who are working remotely.
Juan, thank you so much. Nothing is simple in this world, and I'm sure you've made many people a little nervous now. Every time I have a very jam-packed, wealthy seminar, it always makes me think. But thank you so much. You and Carmen did a great job. I want to move to the, let's see if we can, our slide to the next slide, which would be Q&A. So if you have questions, there's a text number that you can send us questions, and then we'll field them from our side and have Juan. I think we still have Carmen on for a minute, but I did have one question that is Carmen. Maybe we can unmute Carmen. And the question was, I have 5 employees. Does the supplemental sick pay apply in any way to my firm?
So while the supplemental paid sick leave does not apply to your firm, there may be other, like for example, the CFRA, as I had mentioned, CFRA, that is definitely something we also want to take into consideration. Like Juan mentioned, the OSHA regulations. So if it is anything regarding, if there is illness that is a part of COVID-19, I invite you to ask us your questions, as be more specific. If it comes up, definitely let us know, because there may be other things that your employees can qualify for.
Thank you, Carmen. Juan, the question on the designation of a workplace remote, could you elaborate a little bit on that? Is it a room? Somebody said, I'm working from my bedroom. Is there more than just that? Is there a diagram, or what is needed to?
Yeah, the more specific, the better, obviously. But obviously, you also don't want to go overboard and making the employee feel that they're going to be in a jail or some cell space while they're working, whatever site they're working remotely. But yeah, just some general guidelines. Okay, is this going to be a bedroom? What bedroom? And then maybe get the dimensions of that. What are you going to have in that? Is there a desk? Is there what kind of equipment is going to be there? If even ask questions, just in an effort to make sure that there's something that hopefully is not dangerous that's in that space that could potentially lead to some type of injury. But it's be creative, but again, don't be too restrictive in terms of what that workspace is. I mean, you don't want to make the whole house, if it's a home, the workspace. You definitely don't want to do that because that will provide the employee with the ability to claim the whole, wherever he or she was injured, if it's in the garage, but the workspace is their actual workspace, or where they're actually working is the bedroom, then you don't want to make that be part of that workspace and then being able to claim that that injury was a work injury.
Thank you, Juan. Appreciate that. I think maybe this question is geared for Carmen. In the event that someone during, let's say, January or February was out for COVID, a valid COVID reason, and if they don't ask for pay, what does the employer do? Is it no harm, no foul, or is it a situation where the employer should pay, but if there's no formal request?
Absolutely. That is a great question. And you are not required to, pay unless there is an ask from the employee, either verbal or written. However, there is a requirement and an obligation that you have. And the obligation that you have is to notify the employees of this Leave Act. So what you want to do is you want to post a notice, or whether you're using a payroll company that allows you to add a document on the cover page. But there are some notices, there are some posters. Juan also mentioned about posters that need to be given to employees. What you want to do is you want this to be one of your posters. The poster is called 2022 COVID-19 Supplemental Paid Sick Leave. Let me see if I have if there's a number or anything that we can guide you to, but I don't have one. But you know what I can do is I'd love to email these to you in English and in Spanish, Javier, because this is what's going to help you be compliant. As long as you provide this information to the employees have the information. It says on there that, if they want to be reimbursed or paid, then that they need to submit this request. So that is your obligation, just to provide them the details.
Excellent. Thank you, Carmen. I don't think we have any questions. No. Okay. So looks like maybe most of the questions were answered. Want to thank once again, Carmen, thank you so much for your participation. Again, a wealth of information. We always appreciate you being with us. Juan, gracias. Thank you again for
Thank you.
your participation, and it was excellent. And for those that perhaps there's a lot of things out there, we will have this webinar posted on our YouTube page tomorrow. Feel free to peruse through that. We've had the prior sessions also recorded, so this session will be available tomorrow on YouTube or on, I think, our Facebook page. So once again, we want to thank everybody. Where our team is dedicated to assisting our clients and partners through challenging times, and we know that even though right now, as I stated earlier, Omicron seems to have subsided, the different regulations are going to continue, and we have to be ready if there is another surge or another variant, and have a good foundation on how to help your employees manage through this and avoid litigation. So once again, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And again, if you have any questions, we'll text them back to you. Once again, good afternoon to everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.